Listen, manhood is extremely important. Manhood is extremely important, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. There's a book that I read years ago called The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell. And one of the things that he talks about in The Boy Crisis was that you can really boil down almost every, not every, but a lot of the major issues that are facing society are from boys that have daddy issues or from dad deprived boys. And he went through this book really highlighting how, gangs or even like Hitler Youth from the past or some of these like extremist groups and all, a lot of the targeted demographic are dad deprived boys, right? And these are boys who aren't taught how to be men, don't go through some type of rites of passage program, they don't really live in a society or household in which proper manhood is being modeled, but manhood is necessary. And the thing that's interesting about manhood is that, you need men to teach boys how to be men. But we also, as men, we need to be full, comprehensive men ourselves. That's a brother, Jason Wilson, talks about the comprehensive man. It's like we have to be more than just some knuckle dragging Neanderthal. Now, dig it. If it comes down to it, we need to be able to handle business, right? We need to be able to compartmentalize our emotions in a specific moment to handle the task at hand. But at the end of the day, we still need to be in touch with our emotions. I use a statement or use a quote all the time, and I use it in coaching. It's in my latest book as well. But emotions are great passengers, but they're horrible drivers. Emotions should ride shotgun. You should never toss them the keys to your car. The reason being, emotions are indicators. They indicate what's going on. You should pay attention to why I'm feeling a certain way, but you should not allow that feeling to drive your actions. Every stupid decision that I've ever made in my life was probably a scenario in which I allowed emotions to go from a passenger to the driver of the car. I gave them the keys to the car and let the emotions drive. Then I said something stupid, did something stupid, acted out of character, or had to apologize for something. That was because I let my emotions get out of their rightful place, right? But emotions are good. We got to have them. We need to be in touch with them. We need to know how to properly communicate them as men. But the reality is, we must be men. Manhood is extremely important. You hear the conversations about toxic masculinity. Remove toxic. Masculinity is important, just like femininity. Some might say there's toxic femininity. Remove toxic. Femininity is important for women. We must be men. We must literally embody manhood and masculinity, because there are times in life in which God has set us up to do certain things. And it's because of that maleness, that masculinity that's inside of us that gives us the power to go and do the things that we're called to do. Should we take advantage of that power? Absolutely not. Should we be in control of that power? Absolutely. That's when discernment and wisdom comes in. That's also when it comes down to the notion of you must have fully comprehensive men teaching boys how to be men. That's the key. I came across this clip about manhood, and I want to play it, and then I'm going to have a quick reaction to it once we get done.
No civilization in history has ever been protected by docile, weak men that were afraid of conflict. That's just not how that happens. So I think it's important to understand that while aggression, all of us are prone to want to avoid discomfort on some level. We typically don't prefer it, right? And that's understandable, but it is a reality. And the real question is the discernment that's supposed to, again, in determining is what level of aggression is appropriate for this situation. Why am I utilizing this level of aggression? To what extent do I plan to use that aggression, right? Is it till he stops moving, or what is it? Or is it just to where he's restrained, whatever it is? That all takes a great deal of training and discipline. And in order to train and discipline on these areas, you have to put yourself into those environments. You can't totally shut it down.
That takes training and discipline. That goes back to what I was saying about manhood and why it's so important for us as men to teach boys how to become men. If you look throughout history, there has always, in almost every civilization, there's always some type of rites of passage program, right? Something in which boys go from boys to men. They have to accomplish something, go through something, and there's a process which helps to indoctrinate them into being men, the men that are necessary for whatever society they're coming from to fully get in the mix and handle business the way that they're supposed to handle business. We've gotten away from that. We've gotten away from rites of passage programs. We've gotten away from really the full indoctrination of what it means to be a man. And because we've gotten away from that, we allow that terminology, or we allow those titles to get hijacked. And that becomes a doggone problem, because if you allow that to get hijacked, then it gets manipulated. And then individuals who have no business, kind of giving the 2 cents about it, start to formulate what manhood is and the problems associated. And then the pendulum swings to the full other direction. And then instead of teaching people how to be comprehensive men, as the brother Jason Wilson would say, we allow that negativity to be associated with the terminology of manhood or masculinity. And now you have toxic masculinity. And then we just say, forget, we're just not going to be masculine at all. We're not going to be men at all. We're going to allow the narrative to get shifted. But that's not what it's all about. Because the reality is, little boys at times are aggressive. Little boys at times do get into tussles in the yard and work through conflict. They handle problems differently, and that's okay in the developmental process. But this is why, again, fathers and mentors and uncles and big brothers need to be there to help them work through the emotional side of those interactions, because you need to realize that every response should not be an act of aggression. Every response should not be something physical. Every response should not be something in which, you inflict harm on someone. But the reality is, those are tools in the tool belt, and you have to have the wisdom and the discernment on when to deploy those tools, because they are necessary. Like the guy mentioned, no society ever was built on the back of docile men who didn't handle business, who didn't protect, who didn't do their thing. You have to have that element, but that element has to be deployed with discernment. I had to swallow a little bit there. That deployment has to happen with discernment, and that discernment requires wisdom, and that wisdom comes through understanding, and that understanding comes through men showing boys how to be men. We got to do this. Manhood is necessary. Manhood is not bad. It's real deal. We need to be in 100%, and we need to do so at the highest level. But again, that does not mean that we're aggressive and we take advantage of our power. That's understanding how to properly deploy the power that we've been blessed with. And if we do our part, everything else falls into place. But if we don't do our part, we leave a lot of openings for the enemy to creep in, and then we got a whole set and a whole host of other issues to deal with. All right. Well, hey, as always, leave your comments, man. What are your thoughts on manhood? What are your thoughts on masculinity? What are your thoughts on some of the stuff that was mentioned here in this video? I'd love to get your perspective. Leave them in the comments. Share this thing out. Y'all gonna be blessed, well, and wise. And until next time, be the quarterback of your mindset. I'll holler at you. Peace.